when you think about spiritual leaders from history, you will.
Yeah.
You sort of get these very neat archetypes, don't you?
You do. The starving ascetic, the thundering preacher.
Exactly, the stern teacher. But the figure we're looking at today, he just completely breaks that mold. He's this massive, deliberate paradox.
Uh-huh. A contradiction that, I mean, it just doesn't seem like it should exist in one person's life story.
So on one hand, you have this incredible intellectual, a man they called the Great Expounder.
Right.
This is the guy who could take one cryptic little sentence from the Buddha and, turn it into an entire philosophy. He was the logician, the systematizer.
He was basically the architect of how to interpret the teachings, the instruction manual in a way.
But then you look at the statues, you look at the art that defines his legacy, and it's not some thin, thoughtful-looking sage.
Not at all.
It's a figure who is famously and defiantly obese. Short, stout, big belly, and the records are clear this wasn't like a health condition.
It was a self-imposed transformation. He went from being, well, incredibly beautiful, they said golden-skinned, to a form that made that kind of body totally impossible.
So today we're doing a deep dive into the life of Mahakaccayana. We're going to get past the fat Buddha statues people sometimes see in restaurants. That's a whole other thing. And look at the 3 pillars of his life.
Right. So first, his role as the great decoder of the Dharma. Then his really sophisticated mission into the hostile lands of Avanti.
And finally, the really strange and dramatic story of why he chose to make that physical change.
And I think what connects all 3 is this idea of form versus content.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, whether it was words, social status, or even his own body, Mahakaccayana seemed to be on a mission to prove that the packaging just doesn't matter, only the essence.
Okay, so let's start with that intellect. The canon calls him the master of expanding the brief. To get why that was so important, we have to look at how the Buddha himself taught. It wasn't always long sermons, was it?
Not at all. I mean, the Buddha was often incredibly concise. He'd give these short, inspired statements. He might say something like, suffering is born of what is dear, and then just stop.
And for someone who's already enlightened, that's enough, right? It's like a direct download of truth.
Exactly. But for the average monk or, a regular person in a village, that brevity is a brick wall.
It's like getting a zip file with no software to open it. You know the good stuff is in there, but you can't access it.
Precisely. And this created real confusion. The monks would be left debating, okay, the Blessed One said this, but what does it mean for us? How do we actually do that?
Yeah.
They needed that bridge from the idea to the action.
And that's where Mahakaccayana comes in. There's this text, the ball of honey discourse, a perfect example. The Buddha says something very short about conflict and then just goes back to his hut.
And the monks are totally baffled, so they go to Mahakaccayana.
And what he does is amazing. He doesn't just repeat the Buddha's words. He uses this almost algorithmic method to expand on it. He takes the idea of conflict and traces it all the way back through how our minds work. He says, okay, first you perceive something, then you label it, then your mind just runs wild with it, what they called papanyaka. And that's the root of the fight.
He's mapping the psychology of it.
Yes. He takes something like the middle way, which can just sound like a nice slogan, don't go to extremes.
Right.
And he turns it into a cause and effect chain. This leads to this, which leads to this. Attachment creates craving. Craving creates suffering. It becomes a blueprint.
He literally codified the how. Without him standardizing these explanations, the Dharma could have easily splintered into 1,000 different personal interpretations.
Yeah.
He gave the language a grammar.
And the Buddha himself totally endorsed it. And he said, if I had explained it further, I would have said it exactly the way Mahakaccayana did.
Which is the highest praise you can get. It showed he wasn't just a follower, he was a peer in understanding.
But Mahakaccayana wasn't just happy to sit around debating philosophy. And this brings us to the second part of his story, and maybe the most dangerous part. His time in Avanti.
Avanti is a total contrast to where the Buddha usually taught. The Ganges Valley was, cosmopolitan, intellectual.
Open to new ideas.
Exactly. Avanti was the frontier. It was rugged, remote, and very, very conservative.
I've seen it described as a bastion of orthodox Brahmanism. So these weren't people looking for a new religion. They were deeply invested in the caste system and the idea that fire sacrifice was the only way to keep the world in balance.
Yes. So he wasn't walking into a friendly lecture hall. He was walking into a fortress of an opposing ideology. The texts show that Brahmins came up to him not just to ask questions, but to challenge him. Hostile.
And the whole conflict really comes down to the idea of purity.
That's it. For the Brahmins, purity was about birthright. You're born a Brahmin, you do the fire rituals, you're pure. End of story. Kaccayana shows up and basically says, that's all performance art.
Which is a very dangerous thing to say to the people in charge of the rituals.
It is. But this is where his logic is just so brilliant. He didn't use miracles or magic. In a place filled with superstition, he refused to play that game. He just used pure reason.
There's that famous debate where they challenge him. They ask him, how can you be holy if you don't honor the sacred fire? It's a trap, really.
It is. If he says the fire is useless, he's a heretic. If he says it's good, he undermines his own teaching.
So what does he do?
He just dismantles their whole premise. He asks them, basically, to think about morality. He says, imagine a man from the lowest caste, but his heart is full of kindness. And then imagine a high-caste Brahmin whose heart is full of greed and anger.
Does the fire know the difference?
That's the logic bomb. Does the fire have a moral compass? He forces them to admit that the fire is just an element. It doesn't care about the internal state of the person lighting it.
So it can't be the thing that makes you pure?
It can't. Purity, he argued, comes from your intention, your actions, karma, not your family tree and not your rituals.
It's a social revolution wrapped in a theological debate. He's telling the ordinary people of Avanti that their spiritual worth isn't fixed at birth. That had to be incredibly empowering.
Oh, it was. And it worked. By using logic instead of magic, he built a foundation that couldn't be easily shaken. Avanti became this major center for Buddhism that lasted for centuries because he taught them how to think, not just what to believe.
So we have the great expounder and the frontier missionary. Both roles are about his mind, his logic. But now we have to shift gears completely to the part of his story that is maybe the hardest for us to understand today, his body.
The transformation. Yes, it's easily the most dramatic part of his story.
So to really get it, we have to understand what he looked like before. The old texts are very specific. He wasn't just handsome. He had a golden hue. He had the special physical marks of a great man, which were usually only seen on a Buddha.
He was, by all accounts, physically perfect. And in that culture, beauty was seen as a sign of good karma from past lives. So his appearance just commanded this immediate, overwhelming respect.
But that respect became a huge problem because his beauty was so, I guess, radiant that people would actually mistake him for the Buddha.
Imagine the chaos that causes. The whole system is based on the teacher and the disciple. If the disciple looks identical to the teacher, that structure just crumbles.
There's the story of the wealthy merchant, right? A big supporter of the community. The Buddha and Kaccayana go to his house. Kaccayana walks in first. And the merchant sees this glowing, beautiful figure and just assumes it's the Buddha. He throws himself at Kaccayana's feet, offering him the best seat, the best food.
And then the actual Buddha walks in behind him.
The poor merchant is mortified. He's ashamed. It wasn't just an awkward mistake. It was seen as a serious spiritual error.
A huge error. And for Kaccayana, who was an arhat totally beyond ego, this was horrifying. He didn't feel flattered. He felt responsible. He realized his own body was becoming an obstacle. It was confusing people.
And this leads to the decision, the one that defines how we see him today. He decides this can't continue. He has to shatter the image.
It's such a radical act of renunciation. I mean, we think of renouncing money or power, but to renounce your own beauty, that strikes right at the core of the self.
So he uses his psychic powers, which he almost never did, to literally change his own body.
Yes. He meditated on the true nature of the body, that it's impermanent and not really all that attractive when you break it down. And he willed himself to become fat.
Expanded his stomach, shortened his height, rounded out his face. He made himself completely 100% unmistakable.
Let me be distinct.
Yeah.
That was his wish. He wanted to guarantee that when people looked at him, they saw Kaccayana the monk, not a clone of the Buddha.
Yeah.
He basically trademarked his own humility.
The irony is just, it's incredible. We live our entire lives trying to build up our image. We want to look perfect, successful, beautiful.
We curate our brand.
We do. And Kaccayana deliberately destroyed his brand to protect the message.
It goes right back to that idea of mindfulness of the body. In Buddhism, the body is just a vehicle, a bag of parts. It isn't you. By changing it so dramatically, he was demonstrating his total detachment from it. He was proving his enlightenment wasn't tied to his golden skin.
And yet, look what happened. He didn't become an outcast. The fat arhat became this icon of, like, approachability. If the Buddha is this almost intimidating peak of perfection, Kaccayana is the warm, wise person who meets you right where you are.
That's a great way to put it. The statues are almost always smiling, often holding his belly. There's this sense of joy and contentment. It's as if by giving up the perfect form, he didn't lose anything important at all.
I think we should clarify for everyone listening, too. This is the figure people often confuse with Buddha, the Chinese laughing Buddha.
Right, who's a much later folklore figure.
Mhm.
Kakayana is the original historical, large, enlightened being. His stoutness is a badge of his loyalty. It's like a physical monument to his devotion.
So when you look at the whole arc of his life, the explainer, the debater, the man who reshaped his own body, a single theme keeps coming up. He was the ultimate pragmatist.
He absolutely was. He did whatever it took. If a teaching was too dense, he unpacked it. If people worshipped fire, he used fire as a metaphor to lead them to a deeper truth. If his own beauty was a distraction, he got rid of it.
He had zero attachment to the method. He only cared about the result, which was helping other people find clarity.
It's all about suppressing the I for the good of the we.
It really leaves us with a challenging question, doesn't it? Our culture is obsessed with optics. We filter our photos, we manage our reputations, we see our image as our most important asset.
We treat the self as a project that needs constant improvement and polishing.
Exactly. But Kakayana saw the self as an obstacle that needed to be dismantled. So the question for you to think about is, what part of your own image, your reputation, your appearance, the way you need people to see you, is actually getting in the way of what you value most?
Is there a facade you're maintaining that's actually stopping you from connecting with people or achieving a deeper goal?
I mean, if a man can give up godlike beauty just to make a point about clarity, maybe you can all let go of a little bit of our own vanity. Kakayana's lesson is that sometimes you have to become less in the eyes of the world to become truly effective.
A powerful thought from a truly fascinating life.
We'll see you on the next deep dive where we investigate old stories to find new truths.